Keep fighting the good fight. Keep letting your light shine.
What a wonderful fall day God has given us to worship Him. Oh, this is a summer loving church. We have not been able to convert that part of this church, but that's okay. Next week's back in the 70s, so you got a little bit of reprieve. It's okay. And we've been in a series on fighting, the fight. Pastor Ted's delivered, and Pastor Jonathan, just great messages on fighting and all the ways God equipped his people to fight and armored them up and gave them divine plans, and they participated in the fights, and the victories were mighty. Well, today we're going to talk about something very, very different. It's still a fight, but it's a fight where you don't fight. It's a fight where you lean in to what is happening and you don't fight back. It's kind of the concept coming up in December, January, February. We're going to have some days of icy roads, right? Roads are going to be icy. And as good as the county and city guys try to be, most of us will probably hit a little ice patch and your car starts spinning. Now, intuitively, what do you want to do? You're spinning this way and you want to turn this way. You want to fight the spin. Well, if you do that, that's when you get into trouble. That's when once you stop moving, you're pulling out your insurance card and you're calling Geico. But if you do what is counterintuitive and you go with the spin, it stops quicker, your car isn't out of control, and oftentimes you can keep damage from happening. It's kind of like I grew up in San Diego and spent most of my teenage life on the beaches of La Jolla Shores. Waves are big in San Diego. They're not like the waves in Ocean City when people say, oh, the waves are so good today, and they're like 2-foot waves, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, 8-10-foot waves are, that's a typical Saturday. And everybody who would go to the beach that had been raised there knew that there was a very good possibility that, one of those waves crashes under you, and every so often there would be an undercurrent, an undertow, a riptide that would grab you. And again, intuitively, you wanted to fight that thing and get loose. And if you did, you were in trouble. And sadly, that's the way people drowned. But if you would just kind of go limp and you would just go with that thing, it would take you down and then it would spit you out. And you might come out with a bunch of water in your mouth and coming out of your nose, but you came out of it. So today is kind of like that. It's a counterintuitive way at looking at fighting. It's not always what God calls us to, but it's sometimes what He calls us to. Because sometimes this situation is so huge, it's so big, and sometimes it's something that God allowed. So you can be rebuking Satan for the rest of time, and that's not going to be effective because God allowed it for a reason, and He knows what He's doing. But during those times, verses are written like David penned. I would have fainted, died, croaked, unless I had believed to see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Man, when you're in a fight like I'm talking about right now, you are desperate to see what on earth God is doing. There are the times when God is silent and you want Him to speak, and He doesn't. There's just silence. And when we get in that kind of pain and that kind of fight, we can respond in a number of different ways. We can avoid it as much as possible. We can attempt to avoid it. Think about the rich young ruler who came to Jesus, and he said he'd done everything right to serve God, and he said, what do I have left to do? Something felt incomplete in him, and Jesus said, give away all of your riches to the poor, and then we'll be good. You'll have done what you're supposed to do. And he shook his head. He said, can't do it, and he walked. Sometimes when we get in the deepest pain of our life, in the darkest hole that we will ever find ourselves in, sometimes we walk. sometimes we numb it. If we don't avoid it, we numb it. And there are all sorts of addictions that can numb our pain when we're so pain-filled that we just cannot comprehend or process that amount of pain. We can drink, we can take drugs, we can gamble, we can shop, we can be addicted to fun, we can be addicted to adrenaline, we can be addicted to any food, we can be addicted to anything that helps us not have to think about how we're really feeling. Or I think sometimes we kind of become like Christian Buddhists, is what I call them. In Buddhism, the highest place to attain to is nirvana. And nirvana is kind of a state of nothingness where you're just not feeling anything. And I kind of can see on somebody's face, just because I'm a pro at this kind of pain, when they're doing that. You know when you say, how are you doing? Good, I'm doing good. Everything's good. No, how are you really doing? No, absolutely good. Everything's good, couldn't be better. Good, how are you? Yep, no, I'm good. I'm good, couldn't be better. God is good all the time. Now, sometimes we have to do that. We can't walk around, snot running down our face and, bawling our eyes out. Have some decorum. And don't ask either of us what it is, because it's Nunya. Friday, Ted and I had one of the greatest challenges of our Christian life, ever. And you know what? I'm fine. I'm good. I really am on that one. God gave us His grace. He gave us His grace. He gave us His grace. So good. But in this type of fight, what we're challenged to do is to embrace it. To embrace it. Not to fight, but to embrace. And in doing so, we win a mighty victory. And I'm sorry to tell you this morning that this is the study of the life of Job. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, boy. Don't get up and go to the bathroom and go out and get in your car and leave. I can see out the side windows. Hang with me, because I'm going to spend most of my time in chapter 42. So Job, according to scholars, was a patriarch, a contemporary of the patriarch. So he probably heard about Abraham's God, and that was the God he was serving. And he knew about as much about God as Abraham did, and as it was shared throughout the world that they lived in. And as much as Job knew of God, Job served God with his entire heart. He loved God with everything in him. And so Satan one day is roaming the earth, which he still is today. And in my Bible, Satan is translated underneath it as accuser. And that's such a good word to remember. Satan always accuses. Satan always condemns. God talks to us sternly, but whenever we're being accused or condemned, it is always the devil, because he's the accuser of the brethren, and that's the way he comes at. So Satan comes before God, and God says, my earth looks pretty good down there, yeah? Satan says, yeah. He said, have you considered my servant Job? God's proud of Job. Job is walking an exemplary life, and Satan says, yeah, I've seen him. And Satan is he's just the devil. Ooh, I just hate him. Ugh. If I cussed in church, I'd say a cuss word right now. He's just so horrible. So he says, yeah, I've seen Job. He said, but the only reason Job loves you is because Job is so blessed. Anybody would serve and love a God that was as blessed as Job is. Job doesn't really love you. Job loves all his blessing. Well, now, God knows everything, and God doesn't get intimidated, and God doesn't get baited by some turd called Satan. But God knew what Job was made of, and Job didn't yet know what Job was made of. And God and Job had a relationship, but it wasn't the relationship God wanted them to have. So God said, okay, Go ahead. Take away everything he has. Take away all this blessing. He's still going to love me. So that's what the devil did. 10 children die in one day. Lost all of his children. Can you imagine? Every one of your children gone one day. All of his herds and his cattle. Every bit of wealth and resource that he had in one day, gone. Job is now a poor man with no family but a wife. And if he was probably wishing the wife had been with the children. Job says, naked I came into this world, naked I'm going to go out of this world. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Woo! You go, Job. So the devil comes back and says, yeah, okay, he doesn't have anything. But you let me take his health away from him. You let me get at his body and he'll curse you. God said, go ahead. I know, my man. So Satan sends disease and boils, and now he has got pussy boils all over him. And Job ends up sitting on a little mound with shards of pottery, scraping his boils. And the only family he has left that's around there is his wife, and his wife comes and looks at him and looks at how disgusting he is, and now he doesn't have any money and they don't have any children, and she says, why don't you just curse God and die? Wow. Why don't you just curse God and die? Why didn't he just curse God and die? What a day that man had had. I think God made it such a day that, we may have some bad times, but he went ahead and made it the ultimate, besides Calvary, the ultimate bad day. And so some friends come and start chit-chatting with Job. Sometimes they say things that are true. Most of the time they're just talking out of somewhere else. And Job goes through some tough discussions. He's like, if this is going to be my life, why didn't I just die when I was born? Why wasn't I stillborn? I don't get this, God. And you know what? God, through the whole thing, he doesn't sin. God can take our questions, right? God can take our deepest questions. God can take our anger. God can take the things that maybe nobody else could take. But you can be completely honest with God because he knows it anyway. And God didn't get mad at Job because Job popped off a few times, but God said he didn't sin. So we have 40 chapters of this, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's just exhausting. It's just exhausting. You want all of them to shut up. And finally in chapter 42 they do. And this is where we land today. Chapter 42. How when you are in the worst trial of your life, the deepest valley of your life, how do you turn into it? How do you position yourself where God is able to be glorified and you are able to be restored? Chapter 42, friend, chapter 42. First of all, Job has to come to terms with God. In the first 6 verses of chapter 42, Job affirms 3 truths about his relationship with God. And these are things that God requires all of his children to learn at some point in their life. The evidence that we have learned these unchanging truths about God, listen to this, it is not found in the mountaintop experiences of our life. It is found in the valley. These truths are faith truths. These are truths and declarations you make before anything changes, because at that moment you have come to a new revelation of God, and it doesn't matter what is going on around you, something has changed inside you. And you now are seeing and connecting with God in a new way, and the beginning of the miracle starts there. Nothing's going to change before this happens. It's going to be as bad as it ever was, and then a little bit worse. And so Job declares on his ash heap with his scabby, nasty body, In verse 1 and 2, then Job replied to the Lord and says, I know that you can do all things. I want you to stop there. I know you can do all things. Sometimes we stop there. Sometimes we stop there. You know what, God? I've been serving you a long time. I believe your word. I know you can do everything. But you haven't done anything for me. You haven't answered any of my prayers. I know you could have. It's not that I don't have faith in you. I do. I believe. I believe you can do anything. I've seen you do it in their life, and in their life, and in their life. But you haven't done anything for me. And if you stop there just saying, I know you can do anything, you will know where that ends up? You get angry at God. You can't help it. You get angry at God because you know he could have stopped it. You know he could have reversed it. You know he could have intervened, and he didn't. And so you get mad. What is it about me? What is it about my life? Why can't I buy a miracle? Why can't I buy an answered prayer? But that's not where Job stopped. He said, I know that you can do all things. I also know that no plan of yours can be thwarted. That's the revelation. Job says, I know I have lost everything. I know that my life is a complete and utter travesty. It is an ash heap of dreams that have burned up. I've got nothing to look at that makes this true. But in my heart, in my spirit, where I relate to you, God, I know you have a plan and it cannot be thwarted. I will rise from these ashes. Your plan will come to pass. I will not be defeated. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. That's a faith statement when you got nothing. And that's the beginning of the miracle. That's when we decide, friend, that the Bible is true. That's when we declare Romans 8:37. No, Paul said, no, in all these things we are more than conquerors. Not after them, in them. When we're slap in the middle of the mess, we're more than conquerors. That's when we believe Jeremiah 33:3. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Romans 8:28 and 8:29, so precious. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love him and are called according to his purpose. For those that God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. Let me tell you, friend, this morning, your experience does not change the truth about God. Job says, my ears have heard you. My ears have heard you, but now my eyes have seen you. Come on, church. Do you want to see Jesus? Do you want to see Jesus? Think about it. Think about it. Don't answer quickly. Do you want to see Jesus? Because, see, before, the word "hear" there means announcements or rumors. Job knew what he had heard about God, maybe from some teachings of Abraham, teachings that were around the region. He had a handful of knowledge about God. He believed all of it and he lived it out to the very best of his ability, but that's all he knew about God. But now something different was going to happen. He says, I used to hear about you, but now I have seen you. And the word seen means to experience or gaze joyfully upon, to encounter, to gain respect, to have new views and visions. Man, Job was saying, I see you, God. I feel you. I'm in relationship with you. I see all these new aspects of you that I didn't know before. I'm almost dizzy. I can't keep up with everything I'm seeing. As you and I are now face to face and we're talking intimately and I've seen you. You are my God. I know my Redeemer lives. Oh, he only said that earlier, but now he sees his Redeemer. One of the most intimate encounters in the entire Bible, where he sees and talks to God. Our greatest fear when we are going through hard times and God is silent. Our greatest fear is, have you forgotten about me, God? We look at other people and we see what God is doing in their lives. We know God is still working because we can see it. We know God is still answering prayer because we hear the testimonies. But what's wrong? What did I do? I mean, I've examined my life inside and out, up and down. If there was something to repent of, I'd be repenting. I don't even know. I remember when our son Jeffrey was born and he was so sick. Every day in the NICU and neonatal intensive care, they said he was going to die. He's a child that they said I had to abort, and I refused to. And every day they said he was going to die, and we just, we were believing. We were so young, and we were living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and it was like the mecca of the Word of Faith movement. And I don't know how many pastors came and prayed with me, because I was in the hospital for a while too. And they say, sister, just confess the sin in your life so your boy can be healed. And they'd leave, and I'd think, they were so much older, and I should have respected them, but I thought, fool. Do you think if there was some sin in my life that was keeping that baby from living, that I wouldn't be repenting of it? I mean, come on. I had searched my heart and your heart and the person's next to me heart and every nurse that treated me heart and the doctor's hearts. So you just look around and you're just like, you are silent. Everything bad that I can possibly imagine has happened. And I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know about you. I'm a real why person. Just tell me why. If I can understand why, then I can figure out what to do. But God's just silent. Did he forget me? Could one possibly squeak through the cracks and God forget? Isaiah 49, verses 14 through 16. You have said, the Lord has forsaken me. The Lord has forgotten me. Can a woman forget her nursing child that she would not have compassion on that child that she gave birth to? Yes, even a mother could potentially forget, but I will never forget you. Behold, I have etched you on the palms of my hands, and your walls, your protection, your well-being, your security are ever before me. I'm sorry. You can't be forgotten. You have been written. Everything about you has been written on the palms of the hands of Jesus, right around the nail scars that he took for your salvation. And he looks at him every day and he does not forget you. He knows everything about you. He has tattooed you on his hands. Your walls, your needs, your protection, your security, your blessing are ever before him. And if something isn't happening, my friend, it's only not happening because it's not supposed to happen right now. It's not because he's forgotten you. It's not because you're some deep, dark sinner, although if you got some deep, dark sin in your life, deal with it. I've been there too. I've been in holes that my sin caused. I happen to be in one now that nothing caused. You just remember. You remember that he loves you and he sees you. You remember that things aren't always as they seem. Things are not always as they seem. I remember when our youngest son, Jason, was a swimmer. We had been baseball, football, and basketball family. And Jason wanted to be on the swim team. So we're like, okay. So we go to the first swim meet. Wanted to kill myself. 158 heats and he's in 4 of them. I'm like, shoot me dead. So we'd sit there and we'd say, I mean, football, it's going on, basketball, something's always going on. God bless the swim parents. Anyway, Jason was a very good swimmer. And there was this one thing that, race he was in, I remember, and there was like smack talk between him and this other kid for the gold. Not really Jason. Jason wasn't a smack talker, but the other kid and me. I guess I... Did I say that? Whatever. Anyway, so it was a 400. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so they're racing. They're kind of neck and neck, 1 and 2. And on the third lap, and on the fourth lap, the kid really started pulling ahead of him. And Jason's face just coming up for a second. I've always been able to see when he's discouraged. What Jason didn't know, that what I did know, is the kid who was in the front had got DQ'd. He was disqualified. He had done something that disqualified him. I saw the referee's card holding the DQ. So Jason was in first place and he didn't know it. And I was like, swim, Jason, swim! You're gonna win this! Swim, Jason! I was going crazy. And I got the whole, except for the kids' parents, I got the whole bunch of people around me going crazy. We were all cheering Jason on to the gold medal that he was sure if he finished, the best he was going to get was second, and he had no idea. And I thought about that afterwards, and I thought, we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses that have gone before us, and they can see what we can't see. They know that God is up there DQing the devil and doing all these things, and we think we're in last place, and they're saying, no, run the race, you're winning, run the race, keep going. And they're cheering us on to victory. The minute we get, the nanosecond we get to heaven, we're going to go, oh. Well, that makes sense now. In a moment. But they're up there. Those that we love, that have gone before us, they're up there cheering us on because they know. They know. Don't have much time for my next 2 points. The second thing that needed to happen in Job's life is Job had to come to terms with what had become his tormentors, his 3 friends. They had just done a number on him. They had not been good friends. They had accused him of all sorts of things. You know, everybody always wants to figure out a reason why, somebody else's life is falling apart. You can, in case you have any analysis on my life, I ask you to just keep it to yourself. Don't need your analysis. Me and God and Ted, the 3 of us, we're just working on it. But it was so hurtful to Job. And it could have defined the rest of his life. There could have been such a bitterness down in his soul. I mean, kicking people when they're down, I think, is just the ugliest, meanest thing. I have utter contempt for anybody who does that. And that is why Ted and I, for 35 years, from the second we started in ministry, we were about finding the person on the Jericho Road who everybody else walked by and loving that person, because that's just what Jesus would do. And those friends, They didn't heal him like the Jericho. They didn't pour in the oil and the wine. They didn't bind him up. They didn't heal him. They made his grief even deeper. And so what Job had to realize was that vengeance belongs to God alone. In verse 7, it says, after God had said these things to Job, he turned to his friends and said, I am angry with you, because what you have said to Job is not from me, it is not right. If I had been Job, there would have been a verse 8 that would have said, that's right, I told y'all, fools, that's what you are, fools. And then verse 9, and then God said. But Job, I think, just sits there quietly. God knows how to take care of people. That's why Romans 12:17 says, repay no man evil for evil. Just don't do it. Don't get into that kind of a match. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as lies in you, live peaceably with all people. Dearly beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, or literally that means make room for God's wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Therefore, if your enemy hungers, what do? You feed him. If he's thirsty, you give him a drink. For in doing so, this is the part of the verse I like. For in doing so, what are you going to do? Heap coals of fire upon his head. Be not overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. So Job had to realize that. And forgiveness is our responsibility first, even before it's asked for. So God said, here's what's going to happen, gentlemen. My servant Job is going to pray for you. And I'm going to accept his prayer. And I'm not going to deal with you according to your folly. In other words, I'm going to have mercy. So they did what the Lord told them to do. Wow, what if Job hadn't prayed? What if Job hadn't prayed? Would God have dealt with them according to their folly? I don't know. That's what Jonah's problem was about going to Nineveh. He knew if he went there and he preached, they'd get saved, and then God wouldn't destroy him. And he said, I want God to destroy him. I'm not going to go preach. We can bind people. We can bind people by our unforgiveness. We can keep people bound in places where God's will cannot fully work out in their life because we're so bitter and hateful and ugly, and we can bind people. And whether God has to take you on a ride in a whale or whatever he has to do, if you are harboring unforgiveness, and I don't care if the people are 100% wrong, if you and I harbor unforgiveness, God is going to bring us to the place where we realize it is not worth being right. It is more important to be righteous, and righteousness says, I forgive you. I forgive you and I pray for you. I don't just say, all right, I forgive you. I pray for you. When you can pray blessing upon somebody that has hurt you, you are fully engaged in the forgiveness cycle. You're fully engaged in that cycle. And verse 10, and the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. And the Lord gave him twice as much as he had before. God restored everything. He restored his children. He restored his wealth. He restored his home. He restored his prominence. He restored everything. And Job had no unforgiveness or ugliness in his heart. And you know why I know this, the ultimate test? So he gets everything all back. Everything's good now. What happens? Friends and relatives come out of the woodwork. Oh, Job, I've come to have dinner with you. I brought you a piece of silver. I brought you a piece of gold. I brought you a whatever. I've come to celebrate and have dinner with you. Where were they when he was on the ash heap? Why weren't they bringing a piece of silver when he was poor as a church mouse? Why weren't they coming and saying, come live with me in my house and let me restore you and love you? All these friends and relatives start coming out of the woodwork because now Job is twice as rich, twice as prominent, twice as everything as he was before. And you know what? He says, come on in, take a seat. Take a seat. Wow. That's somebody who's gotten to know God. That's somebody who's seen God. And so foolishness like this, forget it. Don't got no time for that. Come on in and have a meal. Come on. So I don't know where all of you are at this morning. I don't know where most of you are at this morning because like I said, we're pretty good. We're pretty good at good. And I mean, don't everybody come in next Sunday going, all right, my mask is off. It'd be hard. It'd be hard to handle it all on a Sunday. But I guess I know because I've lived long enough now. And I've gone through my fair share of deep valleys. times when I have not understood what God is doing, and he appeared to be silent. And when you go through that, you get a tenderness where you notice other people who are hurting and broken. You get tender eyes that you didn't have before. And so I just know. I know that this message wasn't just for me and Pastor Ted, though we receive where we are at in our life right now, every truth of this message, and stand on it. We declare that our Redeemer lives. We declare that God can do anything and no plan of his can be thwarted. But you might be there too, and that may be that I didn't just preach this message for myself. If so, thank you for sitting through. I don't think so. And God may be silent. And what I'm telling you this morning is turn into what is happening. I spent a lot of time in the particular trial that we're in right now trying to fight it and shadow box it. And it didn't work. I just got exhausted and I hurt myself and other people. And when I just turned in to what God was doing, when I heard the word from the Lord, just show my love. That's all you're in control of. Just show my love. And when I started turning in to what was happening and just began to embark upon a campaign to show the love of Jesus, it is amazing how the Lord has begun to work. And I know he will complete that which he has begun in our lives and in yours. So you might need to turn in this morning, my friend, and I don't say that easily. You might need to turn in and quit fighting. You might need to embrace the pain that is happening, because God is going to reveal himself to you in a way where you're going to see him as you never have. And there's going to be an intimacy and a transaction that takes place that will define and change the rest of your life. And it will be worth it. And he will work everything out. How important do you think all of the gold and stuff was to Job at the end of his life? Pretty sure he probably used it all to bless other people.
Keep fighting the good fight.